in the survey. I'm Ross Hunt with Hunt Research, a Dallas-based survey research firm. And a group of private citizens commissioned this survey, which ran over the course of 3 days, beginning on the night of Halloween, October 31st, and running through the 2nd. And over the course of the past several weeks, really week, the cities of Plano and Farmers Branch, among others, are considering bring forward a motion in their city councils to put a vote on the ballot in May to pull their cities out of Dallas area rapid transit. And there's been a lot of discussion of this, the possibility of this among sort of political insiders. And I think what this survey shows is that there's a real disconnect between where political insiders are at on this issue and where the voters are at on this issue. If you listen to a lot of what you read in the news, you might think that a lot of these cities are just chomping at the bit to pull out of DART and start their own transportation networks. But what we found when we surveyed voters in Plano and Farmers Branch over the course of the past 3 days is that a strong majority of voters in those cities, 60%, would prefer that their cities stay inside DART, whereas only 20.8% think they should pull out. So almost a 3-to-1 margin in favor of staying. So I think that's a very striking finding that shows that there's a distance between sort of the echo chamber on the one hand of insiders and what the voters in these cities really want.
No, it seems like, though, there could be some facts in there, too, as to, this is what we're hearing. This is what we're seeing in the survey. But what about who's on the actual trains and the DART and the light rails, right? Because the number one thing that we're hearing is, well, all of this money's going into it, but there's never more than 3 or 4 people on a DART bus. I mean, even people in the Metroplex, they'll testify. When was the last time you drove by a DART bus and saw it even halfway full? So
yeah, I do hear that a lot anecdotally online. And I don't have stats on DART ridership, so I don't know about that. And as I mentioned, this survey is, I'm not representing DART. This survey is commissioned by private citizens. So you'd have to ask the agency about their own numbers on that. But when it comes to participation, though, I mean, we did ask of respondents how often they ride DART. And among this group of individuals, who's basically representative of the sort of voters who would vote in May, in an upcoming May election, we found that a third of them rode DART at some point over the course of the last year. Now, to your point, many of those only ride sporadically, like they've ridden to the fair or they ride on occasions they're going to sporting events. And I'll say, I mean, this isn't really the focus of this survey, but it does seem to me that there's kind of maybe part of the error in public perception about DART is that people are comparing DART to their experience in, say, like a major highly dense urban area like New York City or DC, where just everything's always packed on public transport all the time. And so I think that's one way of measuring success relative to the transportation network, is to say, well, how are we compared to New York? Now, a lot of people in the New York subway would complain a lot about how things are in the New York subways. But that's why we asked voters directly whether they thought that DART was providing a good value for its tax dollars. And so we put the question to them sort of very straightforwardly. And the way we sort of framed it is like this. We said, so DART is funded by rider fares, bonds, and local city tax dollars from the community it serves. In exchange, DART provides transportation services for those member communities, including your city. Would you say that DART provides your city with a very good value for its tax dollars or a poor value for its tax dollars? Somewhat good, somewhat poor, et cetera. And the results were striking. 55% of respondents in Plano and Farmers Branch said that DART provides a good value for its tax dollars, whereas only 30% say it provides a poor value. So the voters...
I was just saying, all of this is significant in the sense that voters are actually going to decide this. When we talk about the cities doing this, the cities are deciding whether or not the voters should decide. So that's what makes this survey extra important.
That's right. Yeah. And so I think one of the things that I think, those who are interested in funding the survey would want it to come out of this is that, there are always elected officials who are now going to be put in a position of deciding whether something's going to be on the ballot. We think those elected officials deserve to know what the voters really think, because they've been hearing a lot from industry insiders, from people who have interests for or against DART. It's important for them to know, where is the electorate at right now? And of course, ultimately, should the councils decide to put this measure on the ballot next May, the voters will decide. But the elected members of the councils and their mayors get to decide now whether or not this is even worth putting on the ballot at this time.
And I know it'd be hard to predict this, but the fact that Plano and Farmers Branch feel this way, I wonder if other cities are going to see the same type of thing. We're hearing this Highland Park, we're hearing it out of Irving. I'm sure there'll be other cities to jump on board too.
Yeah, Highland Park, I think, voted this morning in favor of putting the measure on the ballot. At least
Yeah.
that's what I heard. And I think that's Highland Park is, I mean, obviously an unusual community. It's not a standard suburb, sitting as it does inside the city of Dallas. And it's very socioeconomically peculiar relative to the other suburbs. I think a lot of the other suburbs may be in a very similar position when it comes to public opinion. And they share common demographic and partisan characteristics. They also have a similar relationship with Dart, which is, I think, is a relationship which is changing right now, over the course of the past couple of years. I mean, for a long time, I think there was a critique of Dart that, well, Dart is so Dallas focused. Dart is not really about the suburbs, but really have seen the agency pivot towards the suburbs. I think the opening of the Silver Line just a couple of days ago that connects Plano all the way over to a Grapevine, all the way across North Texas. That is kind of just one instance of many different projects Dart's doing that's sort of more suburban focused. And so I think wherever public opinion is at right now, I don't think it's likely to get a lot worse in the suburbs because voters are really open to working with Dart. And this is kind of one of the more surprising findings here. Knowing a little about the public opinion background in this area, I wasn't too surprised by that there was support for staying in Dart. But when we asked voters whether their cities should work with Dart to advance transportation in North Texas by expanding suburban services, or whether they should pull out of Dart and risk losing access to Dart services, support goes all the way up to a supermajority of voters. So 67.9% of Plano and Farmers Branch voters at that point say that their city should work with Dart, and less than 16% say that they should withdraw. So as soon as, I think, if it does come to some sort of an actual political controversy over this, I think that as both sides kind of advance their arguments, voters' support for staying in Dart is only likely to grow.
Yeah. And again, we can kind of assume by these findings that it doesn't go hand in hand with, well, nobody rides it, so get rid of it. The option is something that's attractive to people. The relationship is something that sits pretty well with people. So there's more to it than just that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we did take a look at how things break down by folks who ride Dart versus people who don't. And, even among voters who have never ridden Dart at any point over the course of the past year, by a more than 2-to-1 margin, they favor their cities staying inside Dart. And if you look at those who've ride Dart, even occasionally to the fair, it's more of an 8-to-1 in favor of staying in Dart. So I think one of the things, to your earlier point about sort of the trains being empty and people not using it, it looks like from this survey, even people who've used it just occasionally think that there's a high value to it, or at least enough value that they like what their cities are spending on it. And then among voters who don't use it at all, there seems to be some degree of appreciation for the value that it offers the community as a whole.
Yeah. Ross Hunt, thank you so much for doing that with us, and we'll talk to you on the radio.
Thank you, Clayton. Hope you have a good afternoon.
All right. Thanks for doing that. So yeah,
My pleasure.
I'll give you a call tomorrow morning.
Sounds great. 7:40, right?
Yes, that'd be great.
All right. Talk to you tomorrow.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Bye.